This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.
It has been one of the more interesting years in Phoenix Suns history, for sure. Not the year that a lot of fans had hoped for, and then your article kind of got the offseason going as we sit here and say, okay, what are the Suns going to do? So what has life been like for you since publishing the article with Shams Charania that the Suns and Frank Vogel had some issues towards the end of the season?
Well, I guess I should start where all that started. Shams and I connected, and Shams is one of the great insiders in the NBA industry, in the sports industry. And we connected actually before the playoffs started about some things he had been hearing. And then obviously during the playoffs, that accelerated a little bit. And we just started, created a Google Doc, and then just started going back and forth about some of the things that we had been hearing. Some of the things mostly he had been hearing and things I had heard on my end. And it was one of those things I think you could see where this was going maybe 3/4 of the way through the season. And then they finished, Mark, as you know, they finished with that flourish there at the end of the regular season. So you thought, okay, they're getting it together. And then it was just a nosedive in the playoffs. So, we were working on that story. It really picked up after game 2 or 3, I believe. And then the timeline, the published date just kept getting moved up. So it was pretty frantic there during game 4, for sure.
What's it like for you? Shams Charania calls and says, hey, I'd like to collaborate and work on something. I guess that doesn't happen every day, or is that happening more and more for you now?
Obviously, with the Suns throughout, the last couple years, with everything that's happened with them, with the new owner, with Frank Vogel coming in, with the Bradley Beal trade, the Kevin Durant trade, there has been a lot of stuff going on. It's good because you hear, as you know, in this business, you hear a ton of things, and it's hard to know what to believe, what not to believe. I do know during my time working with Shams that his intel is really, really, really strong. So that helps tremendously.
Yeah, I've seen him, I think, 3 or 4 times in NBA arenas, and he's always been like standing in like a hallway somewhere, kind of like in the back, talking to somebody. Real stern conversation. It looks very important, and yeah, the guy is everywhere. And hats off to you for your reporting, because I know these are the tough ones when you have to talk about people's livelihoods. And Frank Vogel, he's it's 1 year, and he's treated us pretty good, and you hate talking about people's livelihoods, but that is the situation. That's the big question right now. So where do you feel like this lands? Does Frank Vogel still have a job with the Phoenix Suns as the head coach come NBA draft time?
It's really interesting because, as you know, during Matt Ishbia's press conference the other day, continuity was a big theme. And not only there, but actually after the game 4 loss with Kevin Durant, with Devin Booker, the next day bleeding over with exit interviews with Bradley Beal. It was continuity. We need more time together. We need time to kind of work this out. We'll be better next year. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think they will be better next year. Having Bradley Beal for an entire season instead of half the season. I think Kevin Durant and Devin Booker still have not gelled the way everyone thought, but more time together, that will help. But the big issue is, in order to have that continuity, you have to have the same head coach. And which it seems like, okay, it's an easy decision, bring Frank Vogel back. But if the locker room has lost trust in Frank, I don't see how you can do that, Mark. I think you have to move on. And then the flip side of that is if you do move on, this is your 3rd head coach in 3 years, which is not a good look at all. Usually in most cases, 3 head coaches in 3 years, equals a dysfunctional organization. I think that's strong. I don't think that's the case with the Suns, but I think, you can make that argument with 3 head coaches in 3 years for sure.
No, and you know what? And reading your article, and it did sound like that the locker room had been lost, and it was a great snapshot. But what I was kind of going through, okay, is this one game or is this emblematic of the entire season? And I do think that something's broken here. Something's really broken with the Phoenix Suns and needs to be fixed. And you can't get rid of all the players. I wouldn't want to have to manage 3 guys making $50 million. But is a new voice going to help, in your opinion?
Well, before we get to that, I think Devin Booker is the key to all this. And it wasn't one incident. We kind of framed the story about the Los Angeles Clippers loss when they got behind 35-4, which was just just unbelievable that a team of that talent would get behind 35-4. There was an outburst in the locker room. Some of the players felt like that was out of character for Frank Vogel, and they really didn't buy into it. But if you really watched, I think there were some body language issues. I've talked to other reporters about this that they've seen, during timeouts. And you could read too much into these situations for sure. But are the players engaged with Frank Vogel? I think there were some instances in the playoffs that you kind of, had that question. But I really think Devin Booker is the key to all of this because if he's on board with Frank, I think Frank Vogel comes back. But to me, just in my being around the team this year, being around Devin Booker was not the same Devin Booker, I didn't think. I think he seemed a little detached. And, he, unlike Kevin Durant, you can talk to him after a game and he may not say anything, but you can sense his frustration. If Kevin Durant is frustrated, his body language will tell you he's frustrated. Devin Booker's not that way. Devin Booker hides that really well. And, it goes back to the chilling comment after the Los Angeles Clippers loss that we were talking about. That wasn't so much Devin. I mean, it was a bad comment to make. It was misreading. It was a little tone deaf, but that was Devin Booker saying, "You're not going to get me to say what you want me to say. I'm not going to tell you my true feelings." He definitely had his guard up. So I think Devin Booker, his feelings, I think the way he goes with Frank Vogel, I think will be the direction that they take for sure.
And with Frank Vogel, he was brought in to, I mean, he talked about a team being scrappy as hell and the defense being his calling card, offensively not being able to get Book going. I think the wins there probably Bol kind of emerging there, and Grayson Allen having a career year, but not being able to unlock Booker and Durant, which, I mean, Monty Williams couldn't do either. But is it is the laughter moment, when he was trying to dial up some frustration and kind of light a fire under his team, a coach has got to be able to do that, right? I mean, have you ever known of a coach that couldn't just, peel the paint off the walls and everybody listens?
Well, and the argument to that is the Suns, even though they lost that game, they won the next night in LA after the outburst. So can you say, did it have some sort of effect? You can argue that it did. They won the next night. But yeah, you have to be able to reach down and find a way to motivate your team. And I think that goes back to, you mentioned Frank Vogel's comments. We're going to be scrappy as hell. We're going to, no one's going to outwork us. This team was never constructed that way. When you bring Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, who all are among the best scorers in the NBA, they're used to doing things. They're usually not called upon to be the guys out there scrapping. Those are your role players, right? Well, you look at the role players on this team. Eric Gordon, that's not really him either. He's not that guy that's going to go out there and really scrap and claw. That's not him either. They really didn't have that guy. Josh Okogie, I think, was that guy. Unfortunately, he got hurt late in the season, so we didn't see that as much. But they just kind of lack that scrappiness as a team. And I don't know if any coach can kind of bring that out of guys who are established as a Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. And I'm not saying that's anything against them. That's just who they are as players. And I think Bradley Beal did a good job of, I know he's taking a lot of criticism right now, but he did change his game. I mean, he did become the point guard, playing out of position, and also becoming the guy who guarded the opponent's best perimeter player. So he did change. It's just the makeup, didn't really fit what Frank Vogel is known for.
Yeah, and I do wonder how you reach a team like this. I mean, basically, you wonder about like Bill Russell, the reason he was the player coach for the Celtics back in the day. But you have three guys making $50 million, and I mean, I put the blame squarely on them. I do think the offense. All year we watch the offense and we're like, why is this not getting better? Why is there not more ball movement? Why there not more plays called? Is this an offensive issue in your opinion?
Well, they definitely weren't as good offensively, I think, as everyone said. I mean, the quote that's getting passed around a lot now is Devin Booker saying, who are you going to guard? How are you going to defend us? We can go back and forth on the point guard issue all day, and people have discussed it. I'm in the camp that they did need a point guard. I know Devin Booker can play the position. He's done it well. He's done it at a high level. Bradley Beal did it in Washington. He can do it, but it's not what they're best at. And by making them do that, it's taking them away from what they're great at. The turnovers, I think, were a direct result of that. Sometimes you have to make it easier on your top players and not make it harder for them. I'm not sure this team did that this year. I know, according to our reporting, Kevin Durant was not always happy with how he was used. I mean, and I know that might be hard to believe when he averaged 27 points a game, but there are different styles, different offensive styles there, whether it's being isolated, and drawing a double team, or moving the ball and keeping, Kevin in the corner, maybe more than he should have been. So I think that's definitely something that was a problem, something that if they are going to run it back, they're going to have to address.
So do some of the folks you're talking to believe that a coaching change could fix everything here?
I have not. Yeah, I have not gotten to that point yet. Because no one knows what their situation is. All we have reported is that maybe that the team at points this year kind of lost faith in what the message was, and maybe in Frank Vogel. So does a coach change things? A different voice? I think it's always probable that, yeah, that could happen. How long, will it last the whole season? Who's to say? I think mostly, though, it's going to fall on those players to figure it out. They need some pieces. Whether or not they can do that with their roster limitations and their flexibility with the salary cap remains to be seen. But I do think a new voice could be beneficial at times. Can it carry them to a higher level? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know that this is going to work, and I don't know if there's any way to change it. And the whole blow it up, run it back. I mean, the comment that I am kind of hanging on was Matt Ishbia saying the house is not burning and we're going to be fine, and just how positive his outlook was. Do you have any feel for how that was received inside the locker room?
Mark, I think not in the locker room, but Mark, I think Matt Ishbia, since he's taken over, has done a tremendous job. I've written before that he has made the Phoenix organizations, both the Suns and the Mercury, impossible to ignore, by bringing in the All-Star games, by adding a new facility, some of the moves that he's made. He's done a tremendous job. And I think no matter what happens, the fallout for this year, next year, going forward, even if bringing in Kevin Durant was a mistake, even if kind of forming the super team was a mistake, he's going to keep trying. He has proven that he is going to keep trying to get it right. And it might take 5 years, it might take 2 years, it might take 10, but he's going to keep trying. There's no doubt about that. However, I think his press conference on Monday was probably on Wednesday was he maybe lost a little bit of trust with the fan base because he was so over the top positive, saying that 26 of the 29 teams in the NBA would trade places with the Phoenix Suns. That's not that is not true. You could say that if you lost in the conference finals, maybe in the semifinals in a 7-game series. You cannot say that if you got swept in a first round that you really weren't competitive in. You can't say that because it's not true. You can't say that you're inches away from being where you want to be when you were swept, when you were outplayed the way you were. So I think he lost a little bit of. I think that was his first major misstep. I don't fault him for busting up the team that went to the finals in 2021 or firing Monty Williams. He was trying to make moves he felt were needed to win a championship. If I'm a fan of the Phoenix Suns, I applaud that, and I have faith that he's going to continue doing that. But he was a little strong by saying, I think he would have been better off saying, like, look, we fell short this year. We're going to address it. We're going to do everything we can to get it right. Stay with us. I think it would have been better just keeping it a little bit more simple than just as simple as that.
Total unfair question here, but I've been having this discussion a lot. If you still had the team that went to the 2021 NBA Finals, how do you think they would have done in this year's playoffs?
That team was so connected. I mean, I think that team was a team that had, like, you felt like after they lost to the Bucks, like they're a team that's going to get back and challenge in the Western Conference, get back to the finals at least the next year. And it didn't work out. And I think people panicked a little bit. But that team had a solid core. It was a young base. It's hard to keep things together in the NBA these days. But to me, I felt like that team was going to challenge over the next 2, 3, 4 years the way it was set up.
If you had kept Chris Paul, do you think you could have gotten back to at least the Western Conference semifinals again?
That one, I've heard that one floated out. I think Chris, my goodness. I mean, what can you say about his career? Hall of Famer. People are talking about putting him in the Ring of Honor in Phoenix just for his for what he did during his short time here, because he was that important to what the Suns needed. He took them to the next level. But Chris, you couldn't trust him because of his age, because of his body breaking down. I just don't think he would have been. That would have been a smart move. And really, I mean, when people say Bradley Beal was a mistake, if you look at it, an aging Chris Paul for Bradley Beal, I mean, that I do agree with Matt Ishbia in that sense that almost every GM would have made that trade.
It was the question I asked Matt Ishbia. I think I was sitting right next to you, and I might have gone right after you asking questions. I asked him if this was fixable. Do you feel like that this is fixable?
we were that was right before you asked that right before my question.
Your question was better than mine too, but by the way, we both got good answers.
What I ask about accountability?
I've got the log here. I was like, yeah, I'll look up the log while you're answering here, but it was good.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, you would think with two of the top 10 players in the NBA, and Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, that's a hell of a starting point. So maybe. I don't know. I mean, it just did not gel, Mark. It just didn't come together like everyone thought it would. I would have to say that, if you could make some key moves and bring in a point guard and someone that can really just hound Luka Doncic and other the Western Conference's top perimeter players, maybe you could make a run. But I'm doubtful right now.
All right, it was accountability and leadership on this year's team. So. Last Suns question here for you. Do you feel like that was what was missing here? Accountability and leadership on this team?
Well, that was the flip side of the story that we wrote after their elimination losses. Everyone's focusing on the fact that the players lost confidence in Frank, but the team didn't have a leader. There wasn't. It's not really Kevin Durant's personality. And in fact, when asked about the team leader, he said that's Coach Vogel. Coach is a leader. You do need strong leadership in the locker room. Championship teams are player led. Booker has been that guy. I think he can be that guy, but Chris Paul was a guy who was the leader, and they lost when he left. They lost that. So maybe it was because people didn't want to step on other people's toes. Maybe it was because this whole team was pretty much thrown together before the season, but for whatever reason, that was definitely an important aspect that was lacking.
I kind of attributed to what Alvin Gentry used to call brother-in-law offense. Like you're opening the door for your brother-in-law. Everybody's just trying to be too polite. And you saw Booker and Durant yell at each other a little bit late in the season, and I thought that's good. They need to yell at each other more. They need to have it out. They need to. And I heard James Jones's comment about the team that goes through the fire has that's how you build chemistry. I feel like there's a lot to that. I just don't know how we're going to get there, and I don't know who will be leading the team. Do you expect to be writing an article about a new coach before the NBA draft?
I really do not know. I think what Matt Ishbia, and I know people have questioned that, but when he said that he had not had conversations yet on Wednesday, he had not had conversations with the players. I think that's what he's waiting for. I think he wants to talk to Kevin Durant. I think he wants to talk to Brad Beal. And I think he wants to talk to Devin Booker, especially say look, can this work under Frank Vogel? And keep in mind, as you know, Bradley Beal was asked just a day earlier on Tuesday, do you want Frank Vogel back? And he said great things about Frank Vogel, great things, but he never said yes. He never said I want him back. So I think that's what he's waiting on. And if I would think that if we don't get if something doesn't break or surface over the weekend, then that's probably a sign Frank Vogel will be back. But to predict it, I just can't. I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Right. Well, you've done a great job. You do great work, and it's just so much fun to see you spread your wings too. You did such a great job at ASU for so many years. Are you still over there at all, or what's kind of your daily responsibilities now at the Athletic?
Yeah, I get pulled a lot of different directions. A lot of stuff with the Suns, obviously. The Cardinals, I kind of move toward wherever's the hot story right now. So I haven't done much with Arizona State lately because they're kind of going through a transitional period. I imagine with their athletic director search that will be picking up here soon, because I think a new AD there will have a lot of questions to ask, a lot of things to fix moving forward as they move to a new conference. But so yeah, to answer your question, I'll still be doing some Arizona State, especially once the season starts. I just haven't been doing it as much lately.
Well, it's always fun reading your stuff. We appreciate your time checking in and just kind of giving us a feel for where you're at, and we'll be waiting for those tweets. I got the alert set. Let us know where we can find you and where we can next find you on any multimedia. Yeah,
I'm at on X, I guess. Just I'm not used to just at Doug Haller, Haller. The only other social media platform that I'm somewhat active on is Instagram, and that's the THE Doug Haller. And then, of course, you can find all my work at theathletic.com.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for making time for us, and have a great weekend.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks for having me.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.